Welcome to the Your Next Move podcast with me, Kimberly Brown. These are my favorite episodes. We have another career and leadership development question episode. So let's get into it.
Yeah.
I knew that was coming.
What are your thoughts on changing careers at 50 years old?
Oh gosh. So I get questions like this. Like, what are your thoughts on changing careers when? If? What happens if? I want you to take away whatever constraint you've put on yourself when it comes to changing careers. Because we want to say, well, what if I'm only 25? What if I'm only 35? What if I'm 50? What if I'm 60? Changing careers is more about positioning than it is these qualifiers that sometimes we put on ourselves. Now, I'm not discrediting an experience that you've had where, I'm 50 years old and I've applied to 25 jobs and haven't gotten a call back. I think there are some outliers there that we may have to consider. But if you want to change careers and take your experience and transfer that to a new industry, I think you should do it. 110%. But remember, it's about how are you positioning yourself and getting in alignment with that next job. Many times I find that I've worked with professionals who they're just, throwing spaghetti at the wall. Like, I'm ready to go over here and they just want to go. But again, it takes alignment. It takes positioning to make sure that the move you're making is much more seamless. We want to glide into that role versus being thrown in and hoping for the best. So yes, you may be 50 years old, but I don't think it's impossible. I really think that making that career transition at 50 is really much more about alignment.
I love it. Thank you. Next question. How can I find a mentor in a virtual environment?
Ooh, so I honestly think that finding a mentor in a virtual environment can be a little bit easier because now that it's virtual, we are so much more accustomed to being on Slack, being on Zoom, Microsoft Teams, virtual events, chatting, messages, DMing. It's really made this much more normal so that people have to get in touch in a virtual way, which means you can do a lot more outreach. It isn't just about attending the event, being there in person. It's essentially democratized access to a lot of leaders now. So I think in a virtual environment, I don't want you to approach it like this relationship will be less than or that it's going to be harder. I want you to keep an extremely open mind and still go about pursuing a mentor in the same way I've talked about in another episode where we break down the 4 key relationships that you need. When you're thinking about mentors, just identify that person who's been there, done that, and is in a new position that you would probably be the next logical step for you, and do some outreach. And don't just put all your eggs in one basket. Find a handful of folks who you can reach out to and see who fits best. Schedule some coffee chats because it's not just about that one person being the mentor of your life, the best person. Sometimes it takes a little while to find that relationship fit. Some people will have a lot of time to give you, some won't have as much to give you. So I recommend you reach out to a few folks and see who fits best. And don't be afraid to follow up if you aren't necessarily able to get a reply right away. And if you're in a virtual environment where you're essentially meeting someone for their first time, or you're hearing someone speak on a stage that you're interested in, make sure that you're active in the chat. Make sure that you're asking questions in that virtual event so that if you can make a cold outreach, at least they've seen your name. And if you do know someone in your network who can introduce you to someone you want to be your mentor, that would be even better. Best of luck finding a mentor.
Thank you. Next question. I want to advance in my career, but not get another degree. Help. I'm also in the education industry.
We have a lot of questions coming in from the education industry. So again, when we talk about, we had another episode where we talked about education, and I said that I do not believe in getting education unless it directly correlates to your job. So my question for you is another degree necessary for promotion? Period. If it is necessary for promotion, you may be a little stuck here. I do think that exceptions can be made for greatness. 100%. I've seen it all the time, every single industry. Exceptions can be made for greatness, meaning that the right relationship, the right role, you may be able to get through without getting higher education. However, I will say, especially in the education sector, that's one of the sectors where a higher level degree is sometimes required. You may have a bachelor's, but they want to get a master's. You may have a master's and they may want a doctorate. So it really depends on the school and your level of relationships, the quality, not even the level of your relationships, and how that can help you in your industry. But again, you may have to get it. I know you said help, like help me please, because you really don't want to get that higher level degree. But the one thing I will say, especially if you're in higher education, sometimes there are tuition reimbursement programs. So as you're looking to get a higher level degree, you're able to do it slower, and you may be able to get it reimbursed to a certain extent. So I know it may be tough, but build those relationships, reach out, see if it's necessary, and figure out what your next move will be, even if you have to potentially get that higher level degree.
Yes, ma'am. The next question, there's a new position open on my team and I want to apply for it, but A, I'm not sure if I should tell my manager, and B, I feel like I'm not 100% qualified. What do I do?
Okay, so this question is very interesting to me because I know that different career coaches will have different schools of thought. I'm a believer that if you have a solid relationship with your manager, it's great to have open communication. Some people will say, don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. But if you have a great relationship with your manager, they may be able to help you through this process. See if you had conversations. I recommend that my clients are having career conversations at a regular cadence, at least once a quarter, where you're having a meeting with your manager to just talk about your career. That is it. You're talking about your upward mobility, what your next move needs to be, gaps that you may have, things they need to see. So in an ideal world, your manager would probably know that you have an interest in this role already. And if you have an interest, you're able to facilitate that conversation. Like, are you ready? Should you apply? What do they need to see? Now, I also believe you should apply anyways. So whether you tell your manager or not, or whether your manager recommends you or not, apply to the job. Throw your hat in the ring. And if your manager is not supportive, you don't feel like you're able to talk to them, see if you're able to work around them. What other peers to your manager can you speak to? What other relationships do you have that could be advocates as you're applying for this job? Now, the last piece of your question, you said you may not feel as if you're qualified. So I want you to look at that job description, think about your experiences. Are you not qualified or are you not confident? Those are two different things. Not being qualified is literally not meeting the qualifications for the job. Not being confident is you feel even though you see that you are qualified. Now, when we look at the statistics for jobs, we know that men apply for jobs meeting, let's say, almost none of the qualifications, versus women want to meet basically 100%. I want you to apply anyways. Now, within reason though, if you know that you are a recent college graduate and you're applying for a CFO job, that doesn't make sense. But if, let's say, you are someone who has 3 to 5 years of experience and you are a high performer year over year, and the job requires 7 years of experience doing what you've been doing, 100% apply. 100%. Throw your hat in the ring. You never know what can happen. But this is time for self-assessment. The same way I want you to assess what is the relationship like with your manager, would they be an advocate for you? I want you to assess, do you qualify for this job when you take yourself out of it? Imagine you're reviewing your best friend's resume and looking at the job description. Does it match? Would you tell your best friend to apply for this job anyways? And that's the answer you should give to yourself.
Love it, love it, love it. Last question. What are your thoughts on taking a new job with growth potential versus staying in my current role that's stagnant?
Take the job with growth potential. That's a quick one. Always take the job with growth potential. Sometimes we are comfortable, and I get this question a lot. And to me, I'm always like, why would you not take the job with growth potential? Why? Because if you know your job is stagnant, if you know you have maximized your experience every single day in that company, in that institution, in that role, and you are not being promoted and move forward and not getting what you want, yes, take the job with growth potential where you know you'll be able to excel and grow over time. Now, in a previous episode, I talked about hustle seasons and rest seasons. The only caveat here, I would say that if you are in a season of rest, if you are in a season of, I think one of our past guests, Paviel Bookman, said, if you are in a season of refinement where you know this is your season to perfect your skill set, but not necessarily catapult your career forward, then maybe you need to stay. And I wouldn't necessarily call that job stagnant then. I would say that's your training ground. You need to refine that before catapulting forward because maybe you're not ready for that job with growth. But if you know this is your hustle season, it is time for you to move and shake. If you really love your job in your company, have a conversation with them. Talk about what is your growth potential, what is next for you, what is possible. And if you don't get the answers you're supposed to get, then I say move on up to that job with growth potential so you don't have to continue to wait and feel stagnant. When you feel stagnant in a job, it's very easy to get unmotivated, feel stuck, disappointed, and that can keep you stagnant in more areas than just your job. So it may be time for you to move on up.
That's a really good answer. Thanks. That's all we have for today.
Perfect. So if you have any other questions, any other career and leadership development questions, I invite you to email me at podcast@manifestyourself.com. And I look forward to talking to you again soon. May your next move be your very best move. Thank you so much for tuning in this week to the Your Next Move podcast. Don't forget to share this episode with a colleague or friend so we can all level up together. If you enjoyed today's episode, please write a review wherever you listen to podcasts. And lastly, if you're looking to join a community of thriving professionals, I invite you to join the Next Move Best Move community, my private community of professionals that includes the Manifest Yourself signature leadership development courses, monthly lunch and learns, and more. For more information, please go to kimberlybonline.com/community. Until next week, remember to make your next move your very best move.